Hello and welcome to Technically Speaking, where scientists and engineers come together to chat about common interests, share knowledge and satisfy some curiosity. I'm Laura and I'm joined by Jasmin and Ellie to talk about sharks and bust some sharky myths. Jasmin, what's your favourite shark myth?
My favourite shark myth is related to Finding Nemo, which I think is a great movie that involves sharks and other aquatic animals. So there's like a famous scene in the movie. Dory injures herself and ends up bleeding, and then Bruce, who's the big bull shark, he gets a sniff of the blood and then goes into a complete frenzy and starts trying to eat Nemo and Dory. Are sharks attracted to blood? And how far away can they smell it? Because apparently they can smell one drop of blood from like a mile away or something, is what people say.
Ooh, yeah, I have heard that too, and I query it. So I did some digging, which I guess we'll get into later on, because I went down some weird rabbit holes. My maths is odd. Ellie, you're a zoologist, and you now work in science communication for a big science news outlet. So what do you know about sharks?
Well, I wouldn't say quite a lot, but I would say more than the average person. I'm a bit of a shark advocate. I feel like they get a bad rep that they don't deserve, a bit like snakes and spiders. I think they're pretty cool, and I think there's a lot of people who don't know about sharks, actually.
And rats.
Oh, also, I learnt, especially for this podcast, that there are more than 1,000 species of sharks and rays.
Wow.
Which I think is cool. And more get discovered every year, because some of them live very deep in the ocean and we don't necessarily see them.
Wow.
Ah.
But sharks and rays get grouped quite a lot because of zoologist taxonomic reasons. But sharks, I think, like, the accepted standard is about 500 species, which is still loads.
If you say shark to me, I just think of Jaws, essentially, because that's the popular one, isn't it?
Oh, you can't just lump all sharks together, Laura. I know Jaws is famous and, everyone's got the dirda in their head forever, but there's more to sharks than just the great white.
I'm sure there is, and I guess that gives us a lot to go at for this conversation. But I think we should start by busting the blood-sniffing myth that Jasmin mentioned. Should we do that?
Yeah.
Let's.
Cool. So I said I did some maths.
I trust your maths a lot more than mine.
Oh, when you hear the numbers, you might say no. So the starting point for this is 1 drop in a billion, and this does seem to be based on a scientific paper where they essentially got a shark in a tank and held. I'm probably misremembering this, but they kind of held something that held some sort of scent close to the nose and figured out what the dilution factor was and just kept reducing the concentration until they knew the shark couldn't detect it by putting sensors on the shark somehow. I'm garbling that terribly, but that isn't the point.
So they did it like in a controlled environment, like they had the shark in a tank sort of thing, and they, I guess, added less scent or more water to keep diluting it?
Yeah, less scent, and then they worked out what the dilution factor was.
And they were like waiting for the shark to swim towards the blood or something?
I think the shark was held in position. So what they came out with was it was in moles per litre, which roughly someone translated it into like 1 drop in a billion. So 1 part per billion.
That does vaguely ring a bell from chemistry way back when.
Yeah, so it was of certain scent molecules. And the one that I think is most closely related to blood is, I think they were using amino acids. I assume you do have those in your blood, going back to our earlier podcast episode about what even is meat.
Oh, yes.
So 1 drop of an amino acid in water, how does that come into being able to smell it from a mile away? I don't think it does.
Oh, God. I suppose you can't quantify how much water there is in a mile of ocean, can you? Like, that's...
Well, if you assume the water isn't moving for a start, so you're just in this confined sphere, say, and you're at the middle of this mile radius sphere, you would need something like 17,000 litres of blood to meet that detection limit of a part per billion.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot more blood. Because you watch those silly movies, don't you? And she, like, cuts her leg dramatically on a rock, and then the shark is immediately circling her, trying to get at her.
Yeah, like it suddenly come from out of nowhere, like they detected it.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is in a mile sphere, and you're not going to be a mile underwater, but even halving that, you're still thousands and thousands of litres of blood, way more blood than is in the human body.
It must be almost instantly way too dilute.
I think the only way like a shark would actually be able to detect human blood is if it sort of just happens to be near a human that's bleeding.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not necessarily that it's interested in the human, it's just like it smells something, it's like, ooh, what is this? I will investigate.
Probably, yeah. I did do a calculation another way and found out what the drop of blood used in finger prick testers, which is 35 microlitres. Thank you, Boston University. And for that dilution factor, the shark would need to be 2 metres away to detect it. And of course, the blood still has to diffuse out.
I reckon I could detect it if I was 2 meters away.
Yeah, it's still not blood, it's the amino acid in the blood, so it'd be more than 35 microlitres of blood to get the amino acid in there.
I think we can consider that myth busted, to be honest.
I think even if there were currents and things involved that were transporting the amino acids or the blood to the shark, there's still a time factor involved. I reckon you'd be long gone by the time the shark smelled it and then came to investigate.
Yeah, also, if you're bleeding in the ocean, presumably you're going to get out, aren't you?
Unless you're trapped.
And also, I don't believe that sharks go around detecting, like, fish from blood, do they?
Not really, no.
It's not a typical thing. There aren't loads of fish bleeding in the ocean that the sharks then immediately are going for. It doesn't work like that.
But there was a ex-NASA engineer or scientist who did an experiment. I say experiment in quotation marks because he basically had fish blood versus I think it was sheep's blood, and he was seeing what would attract more sharks. And the non-fish blood basically attracted no sharks, but the fish blood attracted quite a few sharks.
Well, that makes sense. I'll give him that.
Yeah, because sharks have been evolved to want to eat fish because it's one of their main food sources.
Also, sharks are fish. We should make that clear.
Yes.
Because people do get confused.
They're not mammals. Yeah, they're not like dolphins need to come up to get air. They can breathe through their gills, is the word I'm looking for.
I could see your mind whirring then.
I was going to say breathe through their lungs. That's how most creatures breathe. But yeah, I guess the point about they would only tend to react to certain things makes a lot of sense. And there are probably things that they can't smell. It's a bit like the difference between humans and dogs, is how I think of it. My dog just went wild over some scent before when I took him for a walk, and I had no clue what he was doing.
Yeah, that's true. That's very common.
The general consensus of whether or not sharks are really good at smelling versus other fish, it's a bit confusing because apparently sharks do have really good sense of smell, but other sources will say it's about the same as pretty much any other fish.
I don't ever think of fish smelling stuff. Apart from the whole shark blood scenario, that's literally the only example.
Apparently, fish use smell as a way of detecting if there's predators nearby or if there's a potential mate nearby.
But not food, strangely.
I think in the ocean it confuses me. Dogs wee on lampposts and that sort of thing, and it lingers much more frequently than... But in the ocean, it's so mixed up constantly that I don't imagine scents work the same way.
If you're just smelling something on a breeze or a current, would you necessarily bother pursuing it?
Yeah, it could just be, when you walk outside and you smell someone's curry cooking, you just sort of smell it and move on, don't you?
But also, generally, the ocean smells really bad.
To you or to a fish?
Well, to humans, it smells really bad because I was at one of the SeaWorld things, or something similar to a SeaWorld, and the turtle went to the surface, and when it emerged there was a giant waft and it absolutely reeked.
But that's an artificial environment. That's not the ocean.
Kind of suggests that animal wasn't looked after very well.
Remember, the ocean is also the fish's toilet, so...
I mean, a lot of our sewage end up in the ocean, so I don't think we can really blame it all on the fish.
No.
So if we're going with this idea that you probably can't really smell a great deal of anything of interest in the ocean because of all the stuff that's being put into it.
Yeah.
What would be a more sensible sense that the sharks would use? Is their eyesight better and therefore more reliable?
Apparently sharks have surprisingly good eyesight. They can distinguish colours, and they apparently have quite good, depending on the type of shark, quite good dark vision / night vision. Sharks also have really good hearing. They do tend to use sound quite a lot, so if they can hear splashing, then they're more likely to investigate, especially from greater distances.
Yeah, I think a shark's very sensitive hearing actually, and especially low frequency sounds.
Okay, so if I'm swimming in the sea near me, which is quite likely because I live, I don't know, a mile from the sea, I do it quite a lot, and there's a shark around, what should be my tactic? Do I just kind of be still and float on the surface and hang out until it goes away, or do I swim like mad to get out there?
I think most of the time they're not going to approach you if you don't bother them. So I think probably swimming slowly away in a not panicking might be your best bet. But I don't know what the official advice is if that you're, because of scuba divers and stuff, if you see sharks, what you should actually do.
I wasn't taught that when I learned to scuba dive. I only did it once or twice, so that's I don't think I really needed to know. I was always with someone.
I think they say also try not to resemble a seal. like try and stay vertical, like so you look slightly weird. They like don't dive or anything like that.
Oh, I had heard that they're attracted to people on surfboards because they look a bit seal-like from below with the outline.
It's the round, plump shape.
Oh,
Otherwise, I'm not sure I look much like a seal in any configuration.
this Australian advice forum says reduce risk of being bitten by a shark are to avoid swimming after dusk, during the night or before dawn. Don't go swimming alone. So maybe it's more about the time of day.
Has that got something to do with their night vision that Jasmin mentioned?
Yeah, it could well be. It could be more likely to go hunting at night. I don't know. I guess it depends on the shark species.
Okay. So then to continue my tactic for swimming with sharks theme.
Yeah.
A lot of people use a cage to go swimming with sharks, right? But if you're not doing it at night, given everything we said previously, do you really need a cage, or would you be fine to just hang out, don't splash around too much, don't dive?
I think the thing with the cage is that it's better safe than sorry, right? Because the cages are almost exclusively used for great white shark diving in places like South Africa, not South America. I don't know if they still do it quite the same way, but at one time there was suggestion that they attracted the sharks to the people in the cage by throwing meat into the water, and then the sharks would think, oh, I'll go that way because I can smell it, but not from that far away. Then having people in the water with a shark that potentially has just smelt food might not necessarily be the best idea, but you couldn't guarantee that the shark would attack you either way. But if you're in a cage, then you are obviously protected. And great white sharks are massive apex predators. So if they chose to take against you, you wouldn't necessarily survive.
There's a movie called Naya that's on Netflix right now, and it follows a woman who swam all the way from Cuba to Florida.
Blimey.
She actually did do it without a shark cage.
Mm-hmm.
Because she found that with the cage it was harder to swim. They had to come up with another way to deter sharks, and they ended up using electromagnetic current, I think, because they have a sixth sense, don't they?
Yeah. It's called the... Oh, is it the Ampulle of Lorenzi? I should really remember this from my degree. It's something like... It's got a fancy name. It's the Ampulle of Lorenzini, something like that, which is essentially an electrosensory system. So they can detect electrical fields, which is really cool, including muscle contractions in prey. Isn't that so fun? And also they use the geomagnetic field of Earth to orientate themselves and navigate the oceans.
That's pretty cool.
Incredible. It's so cool. Yes, this is the line that we need to be on, is that sharks are really cool. And we don't have any human, I can't speak today, any human equivalent of this sort of electroreception.
Which is a shame, I think. Imagine if you could.
Right?
Do birds also have the same thing? Because I'm wondering if they use it for when they migrate.
I think they have some awareness of the geomagnetic fields of Earth, but I couldn't tell you for sure. And they definitely don't have these actual, it's paws on the mouth of the shark, or nose, at the underside of the nose of the shark, which birds definitely don't have because they have beaks, obviously.
You said the sensors are on either side of their nose. So when I was reading into what they can smell, they found that the sharks can sense the direction of smell because they have different scent receptors in different parts of their face, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that might be the same for the electrical receptors as well. I'm not going to try and repeat that word that you said.
I guess so. I wouldn't know definitely for every shark where they were on, but it's the ones I've seen diagrams of. If you imagine the pointed nose of a shark, they're under the nose, so they're in, I guess, one area, but then slightly to each side. Or they can obviously swim round and see if it's stronger in one way or the other.
You've also got me wondering whether that is more sensitive than their sense of smell. I've not seen any research to say either way, which is better. And I guess it depends on the shark, right? Because different sharks got different niches to fill.
Exactly. Different sharks hunt different things. So something like a hammerhead would hunt often rays or things that are buried under the sand. So they are really relying on the electroreception because they obviously can't see the thing. But if you can detect changes in muscle contractions of a ray buried under the sand, then you're going to be much better at hunting, which is pretty nifty.
So I guess going back to my thing about the cage, depending on, I guess, what the cage is made of and what you're doing with it, would it help attract them, which is maybe what you want?
Yeah, you're doing it deliberately, aren't you?
Because apparently trying to swim in a cage over a long distance doesn't make sense. I can see why.
Unless you're trying to break some world record or set a world record.
Well, yeah, but you're not allowed to be touched when you're doing that. and trying to do it inside a cage that you're trying not to touch and have the cage keep pace with you, because I assume it would be attached to a vessel, a ship.
Yeah, that's why the woman in Naiad decided to swim without a cage and then use the electromagnetic method to deter the sharks.
I wonder how much of a risk they really thought that was then, if she had to have a cage in the first place. Like, they must have calculated that was quite high.
I mean, the stretch of ocean between Cuba and Florida, there are definitely sharks. It's shark territory.
But they're not that dangerous, realistically. I think I read that there were like 10 fatal shark attacks last year. So apparently, the Florida Museum of Natural History's International Shark Attack File investigated a total of 120 alleged, innocent till proven guilty, these sharks, shark-human interactions in 2023. And yes, the fatal ones, I think it said there were 10.
That goes back to what we were saying about they evolved to do particular things, and we're not often in the sea with sharks, so they've evolved to hunt other prey. They don't necessarily know what we are.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we know what sharks are because we have the internet, but it doesn't mean that every shark is going to be like, that's a person, I shouldn't bite them. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Well, that's not a nice person. I'm definitely going to eat that person because they don't do good in this world.
I'm doing it for the greater good of mankind.
The planet, yeah. But yeah, so this was the thing that made me think, like, really, how dangerous are they? Because I do risk assessments for my career, scientist working in a lab, and I used to be a nuclear safety consultant. You normally look at what's the worst thing that can happen and how likely is that worst thing to happen. 10 attacks in I don't know how many people would have been swimming in the water sounds very, very low. Like, you wouldn't really need to mitigate it that extreme.
I mean, it's a risk, so obviously, like, in places where you have lots of people swimming, that's also potentially, or is an area where you do get a lot of sharks. There will be, like, measures put into place to, like, try to prevent potential shark attacks, but in comparison to, like, other ways that people get injured or killed, more people are killed in road traffic accidents, more people are killed by being struck by lightning, apparently more people are killed every year by falling coconuts than they are by sharks.
Also, if you don't want to be killed by a shark, don't go in the ocean. They were there first.
Well, there's that. That is the surefire way to not be eaten by a shark.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not being killed by a coconut, though. Don't stand under coconut trees. Don't go where there are coconuts.
Exactly.
I have done both.
Lightning is just very unlucky.
I don't think you can... Well, maybe you can actively avoid being hit by lightning.
Just need to stay very low down.
Wearing rubber boots the whole time.
Live in a Faraday cage. We're back to cages again.
The US leads again in the number of unprovoked bites. So I guess if you were going to get attacked, the States is the highest chance, and then followed by Australia. I don't think that's surprising, given the fact that they have more coastline and more sharks than anywhere else. Like, the percentage is just higher, right?
Yeah.
But unprovoked as well. How do you do to provoke a shark?
Like, attract its attention and then annoy it, and then it just bites you.
Insult its intelligence, its ability to smell.
This episode is all about making friends with sharks, not provoking them.
Yeah.
I think we should take a closer look at how sharks behave. So, what would it take to befriend a shark?
Well, we recently found out that sharks have friends, which I think is adorable. And the reason that we found this out is because there was a study on 2 great white sharks that were found to have travelled 6,000 kilometres up the Atlantic coast together. So each of these sharks was wearing like one of those data tags. They were named Jekyll and Simon, adorably. And they appeared to have stayed together the whole time on this massive, massive journey. And they were both tagged in December of 2022 off the coast of Georgia, and they went all the way up together, which I just think is nice, right? Because we don't think about animals necessarily having best friends and pals, but why shouldn't they? And why would they not be a little bit social? Like, it's quite lonely in the ocean.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I thought great whites were solitary.
That is typically what is written in the literature. It doesn't mean it's necessarily true. The sharks don't read the textbooks, as I was frequently told.
I guess nature has some variety. I wonder what led them to befriend each other then. Like, what was the advantage?
Well, there is a suggestion that 2 sharks are better than 1 when it comes to eating things that you might want to eat as a shark. Safety in numbers, all of that sort of thing.
You mean they sort of work together to run prey down a bit like whales do?
Or 2 noses are better than 1.
Yeah, it could also be like a safety, security thing because orcas do scare sharks because orcas are bullies and have been known to hunt on certain sharks.
I think that's the only thing that would take a shark, really. Like a big shark, like a great white, would be an orca. There was a whole spate of orcas killing sharks and eating their livers, which apparently are especially delicious if you're an orca.
Oh, even though they're an apex predator.
Yeah, orcas are quite mean. They also have to eat, so we forget.
They're the bullies of the ocean. Like, there was an observation where there were a bunch of great whites in an area, I think it was like off the coast of Florida. A pod of orcas? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I would go with that.
They were just like passing by, and the sharks sensed that the orcas were nearby, and they all basically just swam away.
I'm scared of orcas. I would love to see one, but I also wouldn't want to be in the ocean with one.
What you're telling me is to be friends with sharks and not with the orcas. So Free Willy was just incredibly misleading.
Also, they found that grey reef sharks hang out with the same friends year after year.
Nice.
Isn't that adorable? So it's not just the great whites, it's other slightly friendlier, smaller looking species that also have mates.
I think it's more like a symbiotic relation, but isn't there a type of shark where there's like another species of fish that's smaller and it just like eats parasites off of the surface of the shark's skin, so basically like gives it a bit of a clean?
That is almost certainly true because there's a lot of ocean parasites.
So is that a tactic for befriending a shark then? Keep
Offer
it clean?
to clean it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. You see videos of sharks sometimes with their mouths open and little like cleaner fish going in and eating the debris. Not many dentists in the ocean, so that's quite handy. So, yeah, if you can offer some benefit to the shark, that might be in your favour to befriend it.
For some reason, when you were talking about fish cleaning their mouths, my mind, having talked about risk assessments, went to, I wonder what the fish's risk assessment for that was.
I think they're so small that it's like almost not worth it for the shark to eat them.
It's interesting that a species has evolved to go into an area we would consider dangerous, which it sounds like it's not necessarily all that dangerous.
No, also sharks have like very fun teeth. So instead of like a set like you or I, they have rows of teeth going back. So like that is a lot of maintenance you've got to be doing on a mouth with all those rows of teeth.
A lot of fish to help clean off all the debris.
Yeah.
So I guess, having said this is all about would you befriend a shark, based on everything we've learned so far about they can't really smell blood any better than any other fish, and they don't know what it is anyway, necessarily, if it's human blood. They're not too fussed about looking at you. You don't necessarily need a cage to swim with them. They have other ways of sensing it beyond sight and smell.
Yeah.
And they make friends. Would you befriend a shark?
I consider myself already a friend of the sharks. They might not know it. I will always try and paint the sharks in a good light because I do think they deserve it. And I think they are really fascinating from a zoology, ecology point of view. And there's so many of them. You can't tar all sharks with the same brush. I'm not saying that there are not accidents involving sharks where people are unfortunately killed and, lose limbs and that sort of thing. But on the whole, I think it's way blown out of proportion than it needs to be.
Yeah.
People have accidents involving horses and cows and all manner of things. So I don't think we need to fear the sharks.
I feel like you might be a little bit biased though, because you did say right at the start that you're already an advocate.
Oh, I'm
for
completely biased. I'm always a friend of the sharks. I'm always on the side of the animals if we've learned nothing from my many podcast episodes. I always pick them.
What about you, Jasmine? Because you came in with some myths initially. Do you feel like those myths are justified and how sharks are portrayed in the media is justified?
I think, sharks really got the short end of the stick. I think Jaws and other myths around sharks really did a lot to damage their reputation. I wouldn't be, racing to give a great white a hug. I feel like it might not like that. But I would admire a great white and other big sharks from a distance. I would definitely try to hug, maybe a whale shark, because they seem pretty cool.
Whale sharks are incredible. I'd love to see a whale shark.
I know nothing about them. What's so exciting about them?
They couldn't really eat you if they tried because they are filter feeders, like basking sharks.
Ah, okay.
So you would be better off trying to hug a whale shark. I mean, I wouldn't just because I don't think they'd like it, but you would be much safer in the first place.
They're also pretty massive, aren't they?
They're huge, yeah. Really, really long.
That's where they get the name.
Some of the longest fish in the ocean, I think, potentially.
I wouldn't hug it, but I would like to get really up close to it, is a Greenland shark, just because they look pretty funky.
Greenland sharks are also really cool. Now I can whip out even more shark facts, because they're some of the longest living sharks. So Greenland sharks can live to 400 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And also, we've got to remember that sharks have evolved 450 million years ago. So if that doesn't mean anything to you, there were sharks on Earth before Earth had trees, and at that point Saturn didn't have any rings. So you've got to admire their longevity.
And they've not evolved at all in that time. All of these species have been around for that long.
Oh, no. No. They've evolved quite a lot. Unfortunately, we don't have the megalodon anymore. I mean, that would have been a shark I wouldn't have befriended, to be perfectly honest, because that was ridiculous.
So big.
Yeah. Absolutely gigantic.
If sharks have evolved over that quite long and distinct time period, they must have had to adapt to quite a lot of changing things, especially now with people doing so many things to the planet.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned people, because we were on about how many sharks kill humans, but think about how many humans kill sharks.
Every year, humans kill estimated 100 million sharks. So this is like for both food, but also accidentally. So in some parts of the world, shark fin soup is a delicacy. The other way that humans kill sharks is actually from fishing and by bycatching. So sharks getting trapped in nets and then just suffocating because they can't move. So yeah, we kill a lot more sharks than sharks kill humans.
We're also ruining the ocean in terms of sea level rise, acidification, pollution, plastic, even cocaine. They found sharks very recently had ingested cocaine. I think probably from something like, sometimes people ship cocaine on boats, don't they, and then the boats sink and the cocaine ends up in the ocean and then it ends up in the sharks.
They think it's also water or waste runoff from illegal labs where they're making cocaine.
Oh, there you go.
Now, so is this like a widespread thing in a particular area? It's not just they found 2 sharks that had stumbled across this massive package of cocaine.
They found 13 Brazilian sharp-nosed sharks between 2021 and 2023. Presumably, if it's in the sharks, it could well be in other fish that more people will be eating.
Yeah, for sure.
Could be in your food chain.
I don't know if Cocaine Shark would be as good a movie as Cocaine Bear was.
I freaking loved Cocaine Bear.
That was pretty insane.
Also based on a true story. It's absolutely wild.
Oh, well, there you go then. I think having gone a bit off topic and started talking about films and cocaine, not sharks, we should probably leave it there.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. So we busted some shark
Yeah.
myths about how they smell blood and why they probably won't attack you, and found some data to prove that many innocuous things are actually more dangerous, like coconuts. Learned a bit about their evolution. I feel like that could be another episode in itself.
I'd happily do an episode on shark evolution.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, and we've also found out about some really cute shark behaviour where they make friends.
Adorable.
So all of this leads us, at least, to conclude that despite what many films may try and tell us, sharks just aren't that scary. I'd actually quite like to be friends with them.
I was going to say, we never asked you what side you came down on.
Yeah, would you be a friend shark?
I agree with you guys. I think don't go and pester them and do things they wouldn't like. But yeah, admire them from a distance. I would be very happy if a shark came up to me in the sea and said hello and then swam off again.
Could happen in England. There are sharks in British waters. You might even see a basking shark if you're lucky.
Yes, I'm always keeping an eye out. So there you go. So endeth our Sharky myth-busting episode. We will see you in the next one.
time.
The views expressed in this podcast belong entirely to the person that said them. They do not represent any industry or organisation. If you enjoyed listening to these views, it would really help us out if you could rate us, leave a review and tell a friend. This podcast was sponsored by no one, but if you're interested in funding us to continue to have frank discussions about science and engineering, please get in touch.